Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
What makes a perfect sequel? There are plenty of great ones, but what actually makes a sequel work for an audience? Is it about broadening the story and the characters? Introducing new themes? Giving simply more of what we expect? Bringing in more viewers whilst pleasing fans of the original? Well, it's obviously a mix of all of the above, but also about simply making a good film, right? In the end, making a good film will always trump everything else. It's tough to make a sequel. You have to introduce new ideas whilst not straying too far from what came before, all whilst under a much more critical lens that would have been there for the first, especially with horror. Fear is about the unexpected, after all. Hew too closely to the original, you end up with something of a repeat, like the Friday the 13th or Hangover sequels, but broaden out too much into new areas and ideas, and you end up with something that feels a part of a different franchise, like Chronicles of Riddick or Exorcist 2. It is a balancing act. I don't want to talk about this from a critical view though entirely, but more of what a sequel should aim to be, and with the release of Halloween, a direct sequel to the 1978 classic that also borrows its name, we have the perfect case study. After all, we already had a sequel to the 78 film, and a whole series after that, and a remake, and then a sequel to that. It has been a bumpy road for Michael Myers, that's for sure. And so today, the filmmakers have decided to go back and retcon everything but that first film, creating their own continuity that stands apart from everything else. It does sometimes oddly pay homage to elements of those original sequels. I recognised this from Halloween 2 and even felt a little bit of the Man in Black storyline somewhere, but I digress. I don't want to spoil too much here. I asked myself before and after seeing Halloween, is it fair to write out the previous sequels? I mean, they do continue to exist regardless, but isn't it sort of saying to would-be fans, don't watch those? Watch this? Going to what Neil Blomkamp planned with his direct sequel to Aliens, effectively correcting what he saw as a bad sequel in Alien 3, I saw parallels with that here. I didn't agree with Blomkamp on that, and I'm glad it didn't happen. As a fan of Alien 3's director's cut especially, that exists now for all to see, and it's pretty great. And though Aliens is undeniably a classic, there are those that lament what it did with the series, such as turning the original xenomorph into cannon fodder, and introducing a queen alien, thus in some ways ruining the perfect organism concept of the xeno, turning its prey into eggs, which produce facehuggers, creating xenos, and then more eggs, and so on. But Aliens is a fantastic film, so its issues, in terms of that original film, are discussed less. Even if a film is arguably a poor sequel, it can be a brilliant film. So, where does Halloween stand? Well, it kind of goes for a similar thing to Aliens while still ensuring it corrects what it sees as mistakes in the original sequel by being a little bit more honourable of that material. Laurie Strode is no longer Michael's sister.
It was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
There is no mention of Sam Hain or druids here. Myers is a very much human, albeit completely evil, presence. We get a Loomis character. We get a wonderful score.
There's a reason we're supposed to be afraid of the sight.
We get back Laurie. David Gordon Green apes Carpenter style wonderfully, making use of the original director's beloved widescreen to often chilling effect. Actually, I quickly need to give a shout out to the visual work here. Following Carpenter and Dean Cundy's original visuals is a tall order, and they take to it amazingly. Now mentioning music, which is fantastic here, of course John Carpenter being involved gives this a certain validation, but he actually wrote, however quickly and carelessly, that first sequel, so it arguably means less here. Basically, Carpenter was involved in both sequels, so I'm not sure really what to say about that. The thing this film gets right is that balance between novelty and familiarity. It knows that it has to follow the mold enough that it gets to play with your expectations. For instance, it uses music at certain points to educate you that when you hear a cue, expect a scare. Then, like any good horror film should, it later doesn't do that. Or it uses music, and nothing happens, to make you feel uneasy, like anything could happen, which is the point of Michael. Really, his attack not being linked to Laurie and her just being in the wrong place at the wrong time is what makes it so scary and is what that original sequel misunderstood. That sequel was what you'd expect. It was bigger in scale, it was more violent, but it lacked the mystery of the first. Laurie was also pretty much a useless protagonist. Save for shooting Michael at the very end, mainly she just lies in bed or flops around screaming. She should have grown, been hardened as well as traumatized, but she is almost completely inactive as a hero. In the new film, she is emotionally affected and hardened to a point that it has changed her, and in many ways ruined her life.
All this preparation, it was for nothing. I mean, it took priority over your family. It cost you your family.
But evolved enough for us to find her a motivated protagonist. It also knows that the mystery of Michael has been taken away. Instead, they choose to play with when we should and shouldn't expect to see him, and the concepts of predator and prey and the perceived connection between him and Laurie provide the scares and the drama. In many ways, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch would have been the perfect sequel to the first, since it is that unease caused by Michael's mystery and seeming lack of motive that made him work so well in the first film. It is hard to repeat that. It was hard to repeat that then, and it is hard to repeat that here, however much I like the new film. Had the original Halloween 2 not existed, and they'd gone straight to Season of the Witch, audiences perhaps would have accepted the anthology-style series nature of Halloween, and we'd have a very different timeline within horror film history. But that isn't what happened, and instead we did get that increasingly poor timeline. Going back to the original and finding a way to wrap up Michael and Laurie's story, combining them not through a contrived plot point, but through a propulsive storyline that makes use of 40 years of unseen happenings and almost no flashbacks, is what makes Halloween 2018 work. Also, accepting and playing with the film knowing just what it is really sold this to me. This is a slasher, but one that is as tense and full of dread as it is violent. But it's also funny, and played absolute gangbusters in the cinema I saw it in. The audience loved it. They're broadening the characters and making use of our expectations, managing and subverting them, whilst delivering what we came for. That, for me, is a perfect sequel. They don't want to erase history, but offer an alternate one that couldn't exist without the lessons learned from the previous series. Is Halloween 2018 a perfect film? No. Some characters do dumb things and there are some logic leaps, but as sequels go, and achieving what a sequel should set out to do, this is about as good as it gets. Creating a perfect sequel perhaps isn't always the same as just creating a perfect film. In the end, you can't make a perfect film, but you can make something that works as the perfect continuation of something beloved. I almost want them to leave the film here and do no more, but I want it to succeed and I really want to spend more time in this world. For me, that validates this film. Rewatching Halloween 2, I didn't feel any desire to continue with the series. With Halloween 2018 by the end, I wanted more, but maybe they should leave us wanting. Regardless, I'm going to return to this film a lot more in the future, whereas I haven't returned to the Halloween sequels or remake for years. So well done to everyone involved. You nailed it.
Happy Halloween, Michael.